Okay, this morning I'm going to be listening to another piece by Carlos Chavez for orchestra. I'm just going to pull up the score here. So this piece is called The Four Sons. And Chavez is a Mexican composer. This piece is from 1925, early 20th century. It looks like this is a manuscript as well, so it's all in the composer's hand here. This looks like to be the percussion list in the composer's handwriting. It's kind of interesting. And I don't see an instrumentation list. I guess this would suffice. So you can see the instruments listed on the first page. The instrumentation seems to be 3, 3, 3, 2, and then 4, 4, 3, 3, 1. 4 percussionists and strings. First, we have here a stave just dedicated to the piccolo. Flute 2 has to double on piccolo, it seems, and then third oboe is on English horn throughout. The clarinets, we got the third clarinet on E flat, but the second clarinet also has to double on E flat. And then we have a trumpet in E flat, trumpet 3, I guess. The horns are not ordered 1, 3, and then 2, 4. They're ordered 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's pretty normal. And then one stave is dedicated to both the bass trombone and tuba. Percussion 1 is on xylophone. I see like Indian drum, claves, suspended cymbal, congas, I guess this would be. Percussion 2, guiro, gong, another suspended cymbal, another Indian drum, another xylophone. Percussion 3, we have some, it looks like some traditional Mexican drums, which I'm struggling to read in cursive here, but they also have their own like guiro and suspended cymbal. And then percussion 4 has is the one with tam tam and timbales, Indian drum, and some other instrument. I suppose I could be more thorough like going through them, but if you can read Spanish, then I think just pause the video here and give yourself the full percussion list. The first thing we hear is actually the basses, and possibly this drum here. Really high bass, kind of interesting little idea. I already have another episode on Carlos Chavez, so if you want his biography, go to that. Let me see if I can find any information on this. It's quite old. I think it's a ballet as well. The Rite of Spring was written in 1913. This was written in 1925. I imagine, since it's a ballet and it's early 20th century ballet, and Carlos Chavez is like a Mexican nationalist composer, sort of like the first one, I have a feeling that it's going to be about sort of the indigenous peoples of Mexico, and it's probably going to be similar to the Rite of Spring, which was about sort of like indigenous Russian peoples, and sort of like prehistory and reimagining sort of that from a modernist lens, you know. So that's my prediction here. I mean, this is here's one of the designs for part of the ballet, so you can kind of get a sense of the aesthetics of it. You know, hopefully you find this interesting. This recording is going to be in the video description. And if I can avoid copyright issues, which I might not be able to since this is only 100 years old. I might show you some parts of the score that I found interesting. So I'll see you in half an hour. Okay, so this was kind of an interesting listen. It's definitely a bit of a messier piece than Sinfonia India, which we looked at a couple weeks ago. And in the sense that it's kind of less structured, it's less obvious what the structure is, but there's clearly a lot of themes that run throughout the piece. It has some really beautiful moments for solo bass and for clarinets and for other like kind of soloistic groupings of instruments. There's some good percussion moments in there. I think I was a little bit off saying that there's a Rite of Spring influence, or guessing that there would be, because it's not really as interesting rhythmically as the Rite of Spring. It doesn't really, everything's in like 2/4 or 4/4 or 6/8. It never really feels interesting metrically. It sort of misses, if you were comparing it to the Rite of Spring, it kind of misses the mark in a similar way to like the Scythian Suite by Prokofiev. Doesn't really, so I don't think it's a fair comparison. Some moments that I really liked. I should also mention that a lot of orchestration was different between this manuscript and this recording. For the most part, a lot of things were added in this recording that weren't present in the original score. And all of the stuff from when the voices enter onward is not present in this score. So he must have added the choir and voice ending at a later date. So, for example, this opening is really gorgeous. There's almost no percussion notated in this manuscript. But in the recording, there's actually a lot of percussion going on. It's a very striking opening. We get a couple more moments where we drop down to just the basses, and it's really effective. And it's just these sort of like meandering pentatonic melodies, and then he throws in these sharps and flats to make things a bit more like polymodal or polytonal. And that's sort of characteristic of the whole piece. It's often like 2 and 3 part writing with weird polytonal moments. There was one moment with the percussion that I found really striking. There's just like a solo bass drum moment at fortissimo, and it's really incredible. And I guess this is the beginning of an interlude. You get a huge like trumpet solo thereafter, and then the basses start playing the same melody from the opening of the piece. In this version, it's just the basses for the duration of this, but I think in this recording there's an oboe entrance and then a clarinet entrance, which sort of start to end this section. Another cool textural moment was like in this dance you get this really fast like eighth note stuff, like eighth note pentatonic stuff leaping around, and then you get these glissandi in the trombones with like these percussion tremolos, and it's just a very weird like texture that pops out. And then I think it gets, eventually you hear some glissandi in the strings much later. But yeah, that sort of stuff was cool. I liked this build-up of the low strings. I like all the low string stuff. That's what I'm talking about, the glissandi in the violins. What I didn't like about the piece was it kind of like often would rise to a climax and then completely cut everything off. And it felt a little bit repetitive in that way. It was just a lot of like building, and we didn't stay on our climaxes for very long. But yeah, it's very like rich with ideas, and I think it's a lot more fun to listen to than Sinfonia India was. And there's like really extreme uses of register and all of the instruments, and it just, I think it would be a lot of fun to hear on its own live, and I'd be curious to see what the ballet itself looks like. in the scope of like things going on in classical music in the 20s, I think it is kind of interesting. And it sets the stage for all this like Mexican nationalist music we've been listening to. And for sure, this would go on to influence Aaron Copland. Like, I think if you were to compare this to any famous composer, it would be Aaron Copland. I think he kind of ripped off this style, and when he transitioned out of his serial period, I think Chavez is, although I don't find his music as interesting as like Revueltas, I think it is very original. Maybe we wouldn't have these other nationalist composers without what Chavez did. Next session, I think we're going to be listening to The Pines of Rome, and that's just going to be like a straight tonal